At this time, I want to introduce two of our speakers that are here, and it's a great honor to introduce a friend of mine, Gene Turley. I've known his family for years. He graduated high school quite some time before me, but
Not that long.
not that long, just a little bit. But we both went to Twin Falls High School. But I personally had been involved with the coroner several years ago on an issue where, for whatever reason, he felt that we needed a coroner's office that, in my opinion, would be something that would be more like what a large metropolitan complex would have. And our current coroner went out and accepted grants from the Obama administration to build this massive investigative room, and I'll let maybe Gene talk more about that. But at the same time, the county, which they still do, owns 2 hospitals that have surgical suites. And my idea is, why don't you just use some local money to rehab a surgical suite into an investigative room? He didn't want to listen. So he took the money from the Obama administration, which was our tax money, and then that, because they took the grant, forced the county to match it to a point. And from what I understand, it's not even hardly used. But most of us in here know that there's always strings attached to this federal money that we get, and it's going to get us in trouble. And we need a coroner that's a local coroner that serves the people of this county and is not getting strings attached to the coroner's office. So at this time, let's give a real warm welcome to Gene Turley, candidate for Twin Falls County Coroner.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I sure appreciate the invite. Chris, thank you for opening up your home to us. This is an important meeting. You know, I realize the coroner's office isn't a major political office. I mean, there's no resolutions that are made in the office. There's no tax monies that, you know, the office deals with or anything like that. But it deals with things that are more important, I think. The coroner's office deals with emotions. It deals with death. And if you if you don't know how to handle those situations, it can be very, very awkward, and it can be a very, very low experience for the people that have lost a loved one. I was the coroner in the 90s. I ran the office with compassion, and I served the people of Twin Falls County. The commissioners at that time felt that the coroner's office wasn't a very important office at that time, so they would make it they paid me part-time, and I just couldn't make ends meet on that, so that's when I resigned in 2001. Since then, the office has grown, as it should, and the budget now is very substantial, and good things in that office can happen. Rick mentioned the remodel of the DMV building. I want to tell you just a little bit about that. The total cost of that remodel was $367,000. Now, the commissioners apparently, when I talked to them, asked Dennis a year prior to wait to remodel, and he didn't want to do that because he had applied for an accreditation through the International Coroners and Medical Examiners Association in Las Vegas, and they required a remodel of his office to include an indoor sally port, a property room, a walk-in cooler, and a fully equipped autopsy room. These were requirements for that accreditation. Now, it could have waited until we got to the hospital, the old hospital. Again, Dennis didn't want to wait. He wanted that accreditation as soon as he could get it. Now, again, the total cost was $367,000. He did apply for grant, a Coverdale grant that covered $95,000. You and I paid $262,000 of that remodel, and the autopsy room has yet to even be used once. Yes, we have not even used, Twin Falls County has not used that. The walk-in cooler can store about 40 bodies. Now, if we had a mass fatality, and he is certified as a mass fatality facility, the walk-in cooler can hold about 40 bodies. Several of the mortuaries, the funeral homes in the area, once in a while, Serenity Funeral Home had a very, a very decomposed body at one point. And they asked if they could use his facilities to store that body until it was ready to bury. And Dennis turned them down because he said that it would cause some type of a human or health hazard. Yes, thanks, hon. It would cause a health hazard to the people that worked in the DMV. So here again, we can't use a facility that you and I have paid for, and we paid some good money for this facility. And that's very frustrating to me. One other thing that Dennis has done that I very much, the $40 fee. For 9 years, starting in 2004, he proposed and implemented through the commissioners. They passed a resolution for the county, a county ordinance, that if somebody passed away at the home or the hospital under the coroner's jurisdiction, then the coroner would charge $40 to respond to that call. So in other words, the family.
Go down there and die down there and you'd save your money?
I don't think anybody ever tried that. Well, after the death, 3 weeks later, you'd get a $40 bill from the coroner's office, and then if you wanted to cremate, you'd get another $40 bill because he charged for signing the cremation authorization. We were the only county in the state doing this. The commissioners, our current commissioners, for the last couple years have been after Dennis to quit these fees, and he's refused to do it. I told him in July, when I told him that I was going to run against him, that I'm going to use this in my platform, and I'm going to abolish those fees as soon as I took over office. The first day I took over office, I'm going to take those fees away. Well, in October, then he quit the fees. And he said it was just time for those fees to be gone, and he never liked them and things like that. And I know different. It's an election year, obviously. I want to serve the people of Twin Falls County. I think the coroner's office has gotten away from serving the people in Twin Falls County. I want to bring that back. I want to implement a drug education program in our schools. I've talked to several superintendents, school district superintendents. I've talked to numerous principals in our high schools throughout the county. I've gone door to door this last couple months and talked to people face to face and told them, this is my plans. The schools, we haven't had a drug education program in our schools in over 10 years. The DARE program hasn't been around, and the DARE program wasn't a really good program to begin with. It wasn't a real good program. I think it drew more kids into drugs than it did discouraging them. The program I want to implement, I devised. I call it the CADAT program, Kids Against Drugs, Alcohol, and Tobacco. I come in, and I did this when I was the coroner in the 90s, when I was paid that 1 year full-time. I brought in a diseased heart, a healthy heart, a diseased lung, a healthy lung, and so on. I showed our kids the difference of what a healthy lungs look like or a smoker's lung. And I asked them, which do you want to have? Or I'd show them an alcoholic liver as opposed to a healthy liver. And I'd ask them, which liver would you rather have in your body? And it changed lives. I am not kidding. To even up to about a year or so ago, I would have kids that had remembered me when they were like in the 5th or 6th grade, showing these things. I would have them come up to me and tell me, Mr. Turley, I've never had a drink or I've never smoked a cigarette because of your program. Now that's, to me, touches my heart. I feel like, hey, I've helped them in their lives make that decision. With the legalization of marijuana coming, and it's coming, it's in Colorado and Washington. You know, Oregon's going to pass it. Nevada's going to pass it. I've heard grumblings that Utah is looking to pass it. And what happens is they look at this tax money. They look at this tax money. By 2018, the marijuana market will be worth $10 billion. $10 billion.
That's
And
tax revenue, right?
and this is tax revenue.
Tax revenue.
I heard that, I've heard, and I don't know, I haven't substantiated, but I've heard that Colorado will make about 14 million in revenue, in taxes on the marijuana. So these states are looking at the money. I want to look at what happens to the people that take a drag on the marijuana cigarettes.
Gateway drug.
There was a study that come out from Northwestern University in Illinois, in Chicago. First study of its kind ever. Scientific proof that marijuana affects the brain. It destroys cells. It destroys your working memory. And that's what we all function on, is our working memory. Just a casual use, two marijuana cigarettes a week will affect your memory. It will affect your drive, your ambition. They even interviewed some kids on this when they had this 40-20 or a 420 celebration in Denver here just a few weeks ago. And they interviewed this kid. He was obviously high. This is on the news. And he didn't even know what day it was. Couldn't remember what day it was. And he didn't care. And these are the kinds of things I don't want to see our students, our children in this county be like. I don't want that. I want them to know what happens when you drink alcohol, or what happens when you take marijuana, smoke marijuana, or take drugs. To me, knowledge is power. And just because it's legal doesn't make it right. And I want our children to know this. I want them to be able to make the right decisions. Because that's another thing in my cadet program that I talk about is decisions. You know, these students, these young adults don't realize the decisions they make affects not only their family and their friends, but the community they live in. You remember when this Twist girl was killed over in Rupert here just several weeks ago. Didn't that affect you? Boy, it affected me. I kept thinking about that for days after. Just thinking of her family and what they're going through and things like that. And this is what I want our children, our students, our young adults to realize, that no matter what they do, you're going to pay the consequences. And make the right choice, because it will affect your lives. It will affect your lives. And this is the things that I want to get through. I want the office to be more service-oriented to the public. In my outs and abouts through the county, and I'm not exaggerating, 90% of everybody I've talked to that I go up and introduce myself and tell them I'm running for coroner still thinks I'm the coroner. And I haven't been in office for 12 years. And to me, that is amazing. That tells me several things. One thing, Dennis does not get out in the public. Now, in his brochure, he says he has programs in our high schools and in our schools and in the community. Without exception, in the high schools I've been to, they didn't know who the coroner was. So that it just tells me he's not doing what he says he's doing. And I want to. It's not that I want to be a household name or anything, but I'll tell you what, I want to show our kids, and I want to teach our kids and train our kids, this is what's going to happen if you do this. You know, that kind of thing. So I will be out in the public. I've had lunches with our senior centers throughout the county the last month. I've spent time with those folks. And what a gracious, great generation. I mean, there's one gentleman over in Kimberly that I was having lunch with, and I was laughing so hard I was crying, just the way he was handling himself and talking, and it was just fun to be around these folks. I mean, you just get mothered to death when you go there. You ought to take time and have lunch at a senior center sometime. It is just amazing. They're just fun people to be with. So I've had lunch with them. I've been door to door throughout the county, and I just want people to know that if I'm elected in the office, I will work for you. I will work for you, and I will work hard for you. I will teach our children, again, the drugs and things. Rick wanted me to touch, too, about the coroner's responsibilities. You know, before 1986, if something happened to the sheriff, the coroner was next in charge to be the sheriff, would take his place. But that changed in 1986. Maybe Representative Nielsen, I don't know if you remember that or not.
I know, but I wasn't there.
Okay, then, so I can say anything I want then, right? No, I'm just,
Happens a lot.
well, it was changed in 1986. It was several years before I was involved with the office. Because that's what I heard, that if something happened to the sheriff, the coroner would be the next sheriff. And now it's the undersheriff. Now, the coroner is the only one to date that can arrest the sheriff. We do have the power to do that. And I think that's only on a warrant from the Attorney General. As if he issues a warrant for the sheriff, then the coroner is the only one that can serve that warrant on the sheriff, or to the coroner. The coroner is the only one that can serve that warrant on the sheriff. Now, who do you think can arrest the coroner?
Sheriff.
Any law enforcement official. Anybody can arrest the coroner, I guess. Any questions? Yes, sir.
With the expense of this coroner's office that you talked about, is there any opportunity to share those facilities with other counties to ease the burden?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that, because what I'm going to do if I'm elected in, I'm going to go to CSI their medical program, and offer them our autopsy room. I want to let them know that, hey, we've got a fully equipped autopsy room here that you can use for your students, you know, that have to schedule and so forth. But yes, one big reason that this autopsy room is not used is because we don't have a forensic pathologist in Twin Falls. The only one we have is in Boise, so all our autopsies go to Boise. Now, Dennis has told, I don't know how many people, that he plans to get a forensic pathologist here in Twin. He's never done that. He's had 6 years to do it. He's never done it. I made a phone call to a friend of mine. He's a certified forensic pathologist in Fresno, California, ready to retire. I talked to him on the phone here about a month ago, and I said, Dr. Chambliss, I'm running for coroner. If I make it in the coroner's office, if I'm elected in, after you retire, would you consider moving to Twin Falls and maybe working part-time and doing some autopsies for us here in Twin? And he said, absolutely. He said, I would love to move up there. So I've sent him some information about Twin Falls. He's going to retire here in about a year or so. And I told him that he probably would have an autopsy maybe about three or four a week from other counties also. And then we can even charge him to use our facility and make a little bit of money that way through him doing the autopsies. He would probably charge around $1,800. They charge $1,700 in Boise, plus gas, plus per diem, and things like that. So it would save the county some money to have our autopsies here in Twin. And I think Dennis did that with that in mind, but he's never pursued that. Yes, sir.
Well, what I was referring to wasn't so much as a CSI. I doubt that CSI would be interested in saving money in any way that's possible. But with other counties, such as Gooding or Jerome or Minidoka, that don't have the resources, why don't we set up a regional coroner like we do with Sercom? Does that make more sense?
That was talked about years ago, setting up, and I think what you're referring to is basically a medical examiner system in Idaho. And then having each coroner as a deputy medical examiner. That has been talked about years and years ago. It was talked about. But it wouldn't work. What you're talking about is a regional coroner, is what you're talking
Regional
about?
facility.
We could do that, but the problem is we just don't have a forensic pathologist yet. Because and to have an autopsy, to do an autopsy, perform an autopsy, you have to have a certified forensic medical examiner to testify in court on the findings. And that's the only person that can do that. But yeah. When I was the coroner in the 90s, I talked to several counties saying, hey, why don't we regionalize, and I would be basically your coroner in several counties. We talked about that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you are elected coroner, will you work with the CSI law enforcement program? Because I went to school with you.
Oh, is that
Law
right?
enforcement program, and I remember going out on a coroner call with you.
Oh, really?
And that helped me a lot, and I
Good.
know some of the other students did too. Would you be willing to do that with the CSI program? And I also know there's kids that are doing law enforcement in high school,
Yes,
cadet training.
absolutely.
And I think that's a good, because that is so hard to learn how to deal with family and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. My doors would be open to CSI. In fact, I'd get a hold of, shoot, I know who it is, but I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, he's in charge of the CSI program, Don Hall, our mayor in Twin Falls. I would talk to him and tell him, in fact, I'm going to submit, if I'm elected in, I'm going to submit to Post Academy an itinerary of what I would like to teach death investigation in their class. And I know Don would appreciate that, and yes, I would open that up. In fact, that's one of the things I want to do. It's another program that I want to start. It's called Deputy Coroner for a Month. And I would go to each high school and contact the principals of each high school in the county and just say, have whoever your seniors are that are interested in the medical, legal, investigative field or forensics to write me a 500 word essay on why they want to become a death investigator. And then we would pick and choose, probably end up taking all of them, but we would pick and choose. I'd make them think they were pick and choose. And they would be invited in as a deputy, and I'd swear them in on the oath of office. I'd give them a certificate and maybe a badge of some sort, and invite them on as a deputy coroner for a month. Now, I would visit their parents before any of this would happen to let them know this is what's going to happen. I would not allow that student to be directly involved on a scene, though. They would stay in the car and they would just watch, and I'd have them take notes, and they would just watch how other agencies perform their works on a fatality. How many agencies are involved, and what are they doing? What's their responsibility? I'd question them. They'd be telling me what they observed. And then after the dust is settled and everything's said and done, then I'd probably walk them up to the scene so they could at least see, the carnage and look at what's going on. But it wouldn't happen until everything was done. But I would talk to the parents and make sure they're okay with that, interview their parents, and if they didn't want to have their child involved with that, then we probably wouldn't go forward with that. Yes,
I
sir.
had a question, Gene.
Yes, sir.
It kind of dovetails onto what Steve asked you. Personally, I would be opposed to regionalizing the coroner. SERCOM, I'd like to see the sheriff's departments of each county take over the dispatch. But I like the idea of the county sharing the MD examiner,
Yes.
because the counties are so small. I know I work in the medical field myself, and Dr. Keith Davis, which is a customer of mine, he's the coroner in Lincoln County, because he's not real busy, so he's able to be a full-time doctor. But the idea of maybe counties using this facility that we really didn't need on a per fee basis, and using this MD that you might bring on is a really good idea. But each county should keep its individual coroner that answers to the voters. And I think that would even take a change with the legislature,
Oh, yeah, it would,
that
it
happened.
would. That would never happen, by the
Good.
way. It would never happen.
And I was going in and out, but did you touch on your law enforcement background? Didn't you work for the Twin Falls
Oh,
Police Department?
yeah.
If you could share that with us?
Okay. Yeah, my background is in law enforcement. I graduated from CSI in the law enforcement class and really enjoyed my career. I was a police officer for 9 years. Started in Moses Lake, Washington. That's where my wife, she's from that area. In fact, I forgot to introduce her. This is my wife, Carol. We met at Rick's College. And after we were married, we moved back up to Washington. And that's where I started my law enforcement career in Moses Lake. After 4 years there, I was a federal agent for Hanford Patrol on the tactical response team. I was there for about 3 years until I got a hold of Tim Qualls in Twin Falls, and he hired me on with the city of Twin Falls. And I worked there for 2 years. And at that time, we had 7 kids at home, small kids, and law enforcement, as a police officer, man, they own your soul. They will tell you where they want you and when they want you and how they want you, and you didn't have a choice. And I thought, I didn't want to miss that much of my kids' life. So I resigned from the police department, and then have owned several businesses since then, and we own Kiwi Loco now. If you haven't heard of Kiwi Loco, you need to visit that place. It has the live and active cultures. I had to throw that in there. But, I was invited on through Cal Edwards when he was the coroner in 1990. And I always wanted to be a homicide detective. In fact, we were looking, when I was going through the police academy in Washington, Seattle PD was recruiting out of our class. And they invited me over to Seattle PD, and that was too scary for me. But I always wanted to be a homicide detective. And Cal Edwards asked me to come on the coroner's office, and after the first couple calls of how he dealt with people and what you do and things like that, I just fell in love with the office. I think it's my calling. I just really enjoyed working as the coroner, helping people through devastating times in their life. I wanted to be the person that they look to say, hey, what do we do now? And I enjoyed helping people through that transition from the death of a loved one. I'm not saying I'm real special, but it takes a certain kind of person to be able to handle that, because it's hard work, it's hard emotionally, it's hard physically, but it's something that I really feel that needs to be done, and that I can make a difference. I want to make a difference in people's lives, especially in our youth. I'm not going to just hang in the office and shut my door and put my answering machine on. I wouldn't do that. And that's another thing that frustrates me with Dennis is when I was the coroner, I was working full-time with part-time pay. And now it's part-time work on full-time pay. Dennis makes just under $50,000 a year, and he just works part-time. And he's retired, and I don't begrudge him that. And I have total respect for Dennis. Don't get me wrong. I have total respect for Dennis. But I don't think he's doing the job that he was voted in to do. And I promise you right now that I would. And I would really appreciate your vote, and tell your families and friends that I'm the person for the coroner's office. And my door will always be open. I will instruct my secretary when that office phone to my cell phone, because I don't want any answering machine in my office. That won't happen on my watch. So whoever calls the office would get a hold of me. So, any other questions? Thank you very much for your time. I sure appreciate you, and looking forward to hearing from Representative Nielsen now. Thank you.